You already know something is wrong. You feel it every time you check out at the grocery store, every time you look at your bank balance at the end of the month, every time you hear about someone in your circle who got laid off and is still looking 3 months later. You feel it. You have felt it for a while now, but nobody official will say it. The government numbers say one thing, the headlines say another, and you are left standing there thinking, am I crazy, or is this actually as bad as it feels? You are not crazy. Walmart just said it. Their CFO used the words hiring recession this week in an earnings call, not uncertainty, not macro headwinds, not any of the carefully constructed nothing, phrases that executives use to acknowledge a problem without actually naming it. Hiring recession. On the record, in public, from the largest retailer on the face of the earth. And that changes what this conversation needs to be about. Because when a company with 230 million customers a week, a company that sees more real-time consumer spending data than almost any institution on the planet, decides the situation is serious enough to drop the usual script and use those specific words, you stop whatever you are doing and you pay attention. That is what we are doing today. Their CFO, John David Rainey, cited 3 specific things driving that caution: a hiring recession, rising student loan delinquencies, and trade uncertainty. And this was not a company that had a bad quarter. Walmart actually beat Wall Street estimates on both revenue and earnings per share. On paper, the quarter looked fine. And the stock still dropped almost 9% in the days surrounding that report. The market was not reacting to what Walmart did last quarter. It was reacting to what Walmart is telling us is coming next, when the largest retailer in the world beats its numbers and the market still punishes it nearly 9%, something serious is being priced in. Welcome to the Miller Report. We track the real economic picture here, not the polished version handed to the media. Subscribe so you do not miss what we are covering next. Here is the backdrop you need to understand what makes this Walmart warning so unusual. For the past several years, Walmart has been one of the rare, genuine winners of a difficult economic environment. When inflation runs hot and household budgets get squeezed, people look for cheaper options. And Walmart is the cheaper option. So the difficult economy that has been grinding down most of the country has actually been good for Walmart. More customers, more traffic, more market share. It got to a point that became a major theme in Walmart's earnings conversations over the past year or so. Even high-income shoppers, households earning well into the 6 figures, started showing up at Walmart regularly. People who previously spent at Target, at specialty retailers, at Whole Foods, started trading down to Walmart because they were watching their budgets more carefully. Walmart was thriving. Leadership was talking about revamping certain stores to better serve this new, wealthier customer base. Things were moving in the right direction. That is the company that just used the words hiring recession to describe what they are seeing now. Let that land for a second. The company that has been benefiting from the economic pain of the last few years, the company that has been capturing new customers because everyone else is struggling, is now saying that even they are starting to get concerned. Even from their position, watching all of these consumer spending flows in real time, they are seeing something worrying enough to drop the usual corporate language and use specific words that almost no executive is willing to say in public. What they are worried about is specific. Walmart has 2 customer stories running right now. The higher income households trading down into their stores. That is still happening. They are still getting that traffic. But their traditional core customer, the working class household that built Walmart's business over decades, that customer is starting to run out of road. The fear is that the hiring recession is large enough and lasting long enough that eventually those new higher income customers cannot compensate for the losses at the bottom. And at that point, even Walmart struggles. That is what it means when the discount floor of American retail starts raising the alarm. Not that things are fine for them, that the conditions are assembling for a situation where nobody wins. Let me tell you what made this hit differently for me personally. I have a Walmart near where I live, big store, the kind that is normally packed with carts everywhere and lines at the registers and the parking lot busy from morning through evening. Normal operating hours at that store mean people are in there. Always. That is just how it runs. I went in a few days ago. It was around 5:30 in the evening on a weekday. Prime shopping hour. The window when working people stop in on the way home, grab what they need for dinner, pick up a few things for the week. That should be one of the busiest windows of the day. And it was quiet. Not closing time quiet, but noticeably, unexpectedly slow. Fewer carts, shorter lines than I have ever seen at that hour, fewer people in the aisles, and that stuck with me. Because the data is one thing, but a Walmart that should be packed at 5:30 on a weekday being oddly slow is the economic reality showing up in physical space. Now, Walmart is not alone in sending this warning. General Mills just confirmed the same story. The company that makes Cheerios, Haagen-Dazs, Yoplait, and a long list of other products you see in every grocery store just lowered their fiscal 2026 sales outlook to negative 1.5% to negative 2%. Their previous outlook was already weak, down 1% to up 1%. They made it worse. The stock dropped 7% in a single day, the biggest single-day drop since May 2022, and that came on top of a stock that has already fallen 22% over the past year. When the CEO was asked what was driving the decline in cereal, snack, and dog food sales, he said, and I want you to hear this, geopolitical uncertainty. I want to pause there. When the average person stands in the cereal aisle and decides whether to put the Cheerios box in the cart or put it back on the shelf, they are not thinking about geopolitical events. They are thinking about whether the paycheck stretched far enough this month. They are thinking about the credit card balance. They are thinking about the car payment. Walmart called it what it is, hiring recession. General Mills reached for the softer phrase. But the underlying story is identical. Consumers in the lower and middle income brackets are under mounting financial stress, and it is showing up directly in what they buy and what they skip. Let's talk about the savings rate, because this number is central to everything we are covering today, and it is not getting nearly the attention it deserves. The personal savings rate in the United States just fell to 3.6%. That is the lowest reading in several years. At 3.6%, the average American household is saving less than 4 cents out of every dollar of take-home pay. For a household bringing home $70,000 a year after taxes, that is roughly $2,500 going into savings annually, before any unexpected expense, before a medical bill, a car repair, a plumbing emergency. That is almost no cushion at all. But here is the part that tells you the real story. The savings rate peaked back in April of last year, and since then it has been falling. What that trajectory shows is what American households have been doing to maintain their spending as incomes have stagnated. They have been drawing down savings, month after month, pulling from whatever reserve they had built and using it to cover the gap between what things cost and what the paycheck actually covers. That strategy has an endpoint. You cannot draw down zero. And at 3.6%, a meaningful portion of the population is approaching that floor. Consumer spending is still outpacing income. That sounds positive if you only read half of that sentence. But the second half is the problem. The spending is being funded by debt and by depleting savings, both of which have limits. Now, add the income picture, real personal income. Excluding transfer receipts, which strips out all government payments and measures what the private economy is actually generating for workers, was down in December, was not meaningfully positive in November, was negative in October, down 5 of the last 8 months of 2025. In real inflation-adjusted terms, zero income growth for the final 8 months of last year. That is the private economy on its own, failing to grow the purchasing power of the workers who depend on it. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics benchmark revision confirmed it. The United States has been losing jobs in net terms since 2023. The income problem has been building longer than most people realize. And Walmart is looking at all of it and telling you what they see. There is a structural reality in this economy that explains why the aggregate data can tell one story, while most of the population experiences something completely different. Economists have called it the K-shaped economy. Picture the letter K. The upper arm goes up. The lower arm goes down. The upper arm represents households that are heavily invested in financial markets or sitting in high-income positions that are largely protected from labor market pressure. Those households have been fine. Their portfolio values were supported by stock market performance. Their spending continued. The wealth effect from rising asset values is real for that group. And it has been doing a lot of work to keep overall consumer spending data from looking as weak as the income and savings numbers say it should be. The lower arm is the majority, workers whose wealth is their paycheck. People who work two jobs, including the part-time positions that vanish every January after the holiday season ends. People whose hours have been flat for 2 to 3 years while inflation ran above the Fed target. People at 3.6% savings rates with nowhere left to draw from. Here is the uncomfortable reality sitting under all of this. The stock market has been the single most important thing holding this economy together. And the stock market is not behaving the way it was a year ago. Certainty is fracturing, volatility is up. The ground that the upper arm of the K was standing on is showing cracks. When companies started cutting headcount, layoffs were presented as positive news. More efficiency, better margins, higher stock prices. The theory was that companies trim costs, stocks soar, the economy stabilizes, and everyone gets to a comfortable equilibrium. That theory has not worked out. The people who were cut are also the people who were spending. The job losses that were supposed to be a temporary adjustment became part of a longer structural income problem. And now the same people who cheered those layoffs are starting to ask the question they should have asked at the start. What happens to consumer spending when those are the people you stopped paying? Walmart is giving you the answer. The delinquency picture adds another layer to everything we have been discussing. Student loan delinquency rates are surging. After years of paused payments, millions of borrowers are now required to service that debt again. And a significant number are falling behind. Every dollar going to a past due student loan payment is a dollar not going to the grocery store, not going to the clothing aisle, not going to Walmart. It is a direct extraction from consumer spending. Commercial real estate delinquency rates are also climbing. This feeds into regional bank balance sheets. Regional banks are the primary credit source for small and medium businesses. If those businesses lose access to credit, hiring slows. And we are back to the hiring recession Walmart's CFO flagged. On continued unemployment claims, the unadjusted number is sitting above 2 million, the adjusted number just under 2 million. People are staying in the claims pool longer. The labor market turnover that characterized a healthy economy, where someone loses one job and finds another relatively quickly, is slowing down. That is the hiring recession made visible in the weekly data. Now here is the tax refund question. Every year there is a narrative around tax refund season, providing a consumer spending boost, especially for lower and middle income households. And this year it is being talked about again. But what Walmart and General Mills are both telling us, indirectly but clearly, is that they are not counting on that money showing up in their registers, because the delinquency situation has become severe enough that for a large portion of those households, the tax refund is already spent before it arrives. It is going to clear the credit card that has been running behind. It is going to cover the late student loan payment. It is going to pay the utility bill that slipped in January. That is not a spending injection. That is a triage payment. And the retailers know it. This is what the phrase hiring recession is really pointing at. It is not just that fewer jobs are being created. It is that without income growth, without real purchasing power, consumers eventually reach a point where they say, enough. Not gradually. They make a decision. I am done funding my spending with debt and savings. I am cutting back. I am paying off what I owe. When enough households make that decision at the same time, consumer spending does not slowly decelerate. It drops. And there is no soft landing from a mass consumer retrenchment when the savings rate is already at 3.6%. Here is a phrase that captures this moment better than anything I have seen in a long time. Forgot how to grow. That is what this economy has done. For years, we have been in a cycle where the turnaround was always just around the corner. 2024 was going to be the recovery year. Then 2025. Now people are saying 2026. And every year, the same conversation happens. Mainstream analysis says conditions are improving, and every year the data shows the same thing underneath. Rising stress, stagnating incomes, fewer savings, more delinquencies. The direction has been consistent for long enough that it is no longer a temporary patch of weakness. It is a pattern. What Walmart is really warning us about is that we may be approaching the point where consumers stop absorbing the stress and start responding to it. Not by cutting back slightly and adjusting, by making a real decision. I cannot keep doing this. I am going to stop spending and start saving and paying off what I owe. When that shift happens across enough households simultaneously, the consumption end of the economy does not gradually soften. it falls. And 90% of everyday Americans do not own enough stocks for a market rally to change that calculation for them. That is the environment we are operating in right now. So, let's talk about what you specifically need to do. Number 1, build your emergency reserve. If you are over 50, the target is 12 months. 365 days of living expenses in liquid or near liquid form. Older workers who lose income in a recession face longer periods before finding comparable replacement work. A 6-month cushion that looks fine for a 35-year-old is genuinely dangerous for a 55-year-old navigating a hiring recession. High-yield savings, short-term treasuries, short-duration CDs. The goal is not maximum return. The goal is enough runway to make calm decisions instead of desperate ones. Number 2, get a financial plan. 1 in 4 Americans has one. 3 in 4 do not. A Goldman Sachs study found that retirees with a financial plan ended up with 27% more money in retirement than those without one, adjusting for income to make the comparison fair. The plan answers specific questions. What do I actually need before I can retire? Should I be doing Roth conversions, and if so, how much per year? What does a 25% market drop do to my timeline? You cannot answer these reliably without a plan. Number 3, think seriously about the timing of your retirement. At 60 years old, the average person has fewer than 1,000 weeks of genuinely active, healthy life remaining. The years between 60 and 70 are different years than the years between 75 and 85. Run both sides of the calculation, not just whether you can afford to retire early, also what it costs you in time and health if you wait longer than you have to. Walmart is telling you something. The savings rate is telling you something. The income. Data is telling you something. Build the reserve. Get the plan. Make the decision with full information. Hit the like button. Subscribe. And we will keep tracking all of this here at the Miller Report. Stay sharp.